Hi everybody, this is lesson 7, addition and subtraction of rational numbers. So our essential question is how can we add and subtract positive and negative fractions and decimals? A quick disclaimer here, a quick note to you, is if you are struggling with adding and subtracting fractions in general, let alone positives and negatives, you're going to want to rewind or rewatch some of these where I change mixed numbers into improper. And then if you still need help, please make sure that you ask for help because a lot of these things you've already learned, but a lot of 7th graders still struggle with adding and subtracting fractions. So if this goes too fast, rewind it, try it again, pay attention to how I changed it, or even better is to come in and ask for a little help on rational numbers. Okay, so for the first exercise, we have a 7th grader whose birthday is today, and she's 12 years old. How old was she 3.5 years ago? So we're going to write an equation and use a number line to model our answer. If she's 12 years old today, 3.5 years ago would be minus 3.5. But we also know that we can write that as 12 plus negative 3.5. Okay, and then on a number line, we're going to do that below. So let's go ahead and practice it with just arithmetic. So in order to do this, we're going to make them improper fractions. So we have 12 over 1. And to do 3.5, we want to do 2 times 3, which is 6, plus 1. Okay, so the 2 times 3 is 6 plus the 1, and that gives us 7 over 2. Okay, but we cannot subtract that because they're not like denominators, so we have to rewrite the first fraction to have a denominator of 2, because then I can subtract the first one and the second one. Okay, in order to change 12 over 1, I would multiply 1 times 2, so then I have to do 12 times 2. And that's because 12, oops, sorry, it would help if I wrote the correct number in. 12 times 2 is 24. So that's because 12 over 1 is equal to 24 over 2. 24 over 2 is 12. Now that I have like denominators, now I can subtract. It's a positive 24 over 2 minus 7 over 2. And later on, when we have the positives and negatives mixed together, it's going to look like this. So 24 over 2 plus negative 7 over 2, because it's 3.5 years ago. Okay, if I combine a positive 24 and a negative 7, we're going to have 17 over 2. Is it positive or negative? It is positive because the 24 is the greater absolute value. So 17 over 2, 2 goes into 17 8 times with 1 left over. So 1 is my numerator. Okay, so positive 8.5. Does it make sense that she was 8.5 3.5 years ago? Let's check it out on the number line. I know that I want my number line to go all the way to 12. So I don't want to put 0 here and hope that I make it to 12. Why don't we put 12 somewhere down here on the number line, and then we can label it from there. So there's 13, 11, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3. Do we really have to keep going? Not really, because she's not going to be -1 or -2 or -3 years old, but just for you to kind of see. Okay, for these ones, what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually have us start at 12. I think you've done enough of these that you could say, you don't have to draw that arrow. She starts at 12, 3.5 years ago. Well, 1 year ago she was 11. 2 years ago she was 10. 3 years ago she was 9. And this is where kids make mistakes. When they see 12 minus 3.5, they do 12 minus 3 in their head and they say 9, and then they just see the 1/2 and say, oh, so 9.5. However, that wasn't 3.5 years ago, because 3 years ago she was 9. 3.5 years ago is right in between 8 and 9. So that's 8.5 years ago. Or sorry, 3.5 years ago she was 8.5. Okay, I hope that one makes sense. We're going to practice some more though. Okay, on exercise 2, this time we're starting at -2.5 and we're going 5 to the right. So if we're starting at -2.5, that's right here. -2.5 is right here. Now I want to go 5 to the right. So every time I make a jump, every time I go one whole number, I'm basically going to be ending up halfway between. So this first jump takes me to -1.5. The next jump takes me to -1/2. The next whole number takes me to 1/2. So I've made 3 jumps so far. I've got 2 more to make. This is 4, and this is 5. So I actually end up at 2.5. Now I'm going to draw the nice neat arrow though for you to see. So that was how I did plus 5, and I ended up at 2.5. Okay, let's try that one in the arithmetic way. So to make it improper, we do 2 times 2 plus 1, and that gives me 5, and I keep my denominator, so 5 over 2, and it's negative. Then I want to add that to 5 over 1. Okay, those definitely aren't the same. I cannot add them. Okay, I can't do that yet because I don't have a common denominator. We do need to rewrite this one to have a fraction of a denominator of 2. So 1 times 2 gave us 2. We need to do 5 times 2, which is 10. And 10 over 2, that reduces to 5. So I know I'm correct. Okay, now my problem reads negative 5 over 2 plus a positive 10 over 2. So all I do is say negative 5 and positive 10. If that was an addition problem, the result would be positive 5, and my denominator would be 2. Well, guess what 5 over 2 equals? 2.5, because it goes in twice with 1 left over, so 2.5. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense for exercise 2. Now let's work on example 2, 1 minus 2.25. So part A already tells you, you know that we need to rewrite it. So when you have a problem like 1 minus 2.25, you have to add the opposite. So you have to change two things. That's why it's 1 plus negative 2.25 right here. Okay, so we're going to place the tail on the arrow of the 1. Now, if you notice, this number line is blank, very similar to your number lines, your orange number lines. So what I want to show you is how we can set up this number line to have it make sense for this problem. Since I'm dealing with fourths, I want to go by fourths. And I know I'm starting at 1, and I'm going to go back. I'm going to positive 1, and then I'm going to go to the left 2.25. So really, the 1 can go here because everything in the problem is going to be to the left of that. So we may as well just save all the markings for that. Okay, if we're going to go by fourths, then 1, 2, 3, 4. This would be 0. 1, 2, 3, 4. This would be negative 1. Okay, and now we can kind of fill in between those things. And I actually need to put them on the bottom. So sorry if you put them up top, change those to the bottom, since of course we're going to show our work up above. Okay, so this would be positive 1/4, positive 2/4, which is half, positive 3/4. Then it's kind of like a mirror on the other side of the 0, negative 1/4, negative 2/4, negative 3/4. Okay, and then after negative 1 comes negative 1 1/4, negative 1 2/4. All right, let's hope that this fits. If we start at positive 1, we need to go left 2.25. So this is actually just 1 to the left from 1 to 0. Then another 1, so 2, we've gone to the left 2 so far. We just need to go to the left another quarter, so right here. Okay, so now that entire arrow is to the left 2 1/4, and this is where I ended up, negative 1 1/4. Okay, the rest of the problems we're going to do, some of them will be on the number line, but a lot of them are going to be the skill version. So we're going to go through these examples pretty quickly to get better at the adding and subtracting of the fractions. On exercise 3, we see the problem negative 5.5 minus negative 8. Okay, so I'm going to the left 5.5, so right there, negative 5 1/2. But then it says minus negative 8, so we want to make that plus a positive 8. So now I want to go to the right 8. Remember, we're starting at 5.5 though, so every time I move to the right a whole unit, I'm going to actually be ending up halfway between these. So let's go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and I'm ending up halfway between 2 and 3. Okay, so if I go 8 to the right, we end up at 2.5. So we start at negative 5.5 and move 8 units right. Again, you could do it with the little bumps like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, and right, because minus minus changes to plus plus. Okay, for exercise 4, it says use the number line. You can try it with the number lines. Let's do the first one with the number line, but the rest of them, they're actually kind of easier to either think about them or change them to be improper fractions. So for -6, we're going to go to -6, then we're going to go to the right 5 1/4. So really, I'm at fine at -6. I don't really have to go any further to the left there. Now what I want to do is kind of say, let's skip some, so that way it's not so crowded. So when we number it, let's go by halves. So -4, -3, -2, -1, 0. I think it's a little easier to see the in-betweens of all those. So if I go 5 1/4 to the right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I'm already at -1, which makes sense because -6 plus 5. I need to go another quarter. This is -1/2. I don't want to go another half. I just want to go another quarter. So right in between -1/2 and -1 is -3/4. -3/4. Okay, that was a tricky one. Let's look at the next one. I don't want to do a number line here because 7 plus positive 0.9 is so easy. Just think about money. $7 plus 0.9 or 90 cents, that's just 7.9. I don't think a number line is actually appropriate here. I think we're looking for the fastest way to do some of these. So I kind of want to get used to, coming up with the best way to do these. So look at C. 2.5 plus -1/2. Well, you should know that -1/2 is actually the same as 0.5. Hopefully you said 0.5. And we've talked about money. If you have $2.50 and you owe somebody 50 cents, well, you get to keep $2 for yourself. It doesn't have a dollar sign. I just kind of want you to look at it that way so it makes a little more sense. Same thing with this one. -1/4. That means you owe somebody 25 cents and you have $4. Well, you can definitely pay them back and you still have $3.75. Or you can write it as 3 3/4. The other way to do that one is -1/4 plus 4/1. But I want to have them have the same denominator. So let's call it -1/4 plus, let's see, 1 times 4 is 4. So 4 times 4 is 16. Okay, so -1/4 plus 16/4 is equal to 15, positive 15/4, which is 3 3/4. Okay, so a couple ways to do that one, whichever way is the most efficient. And then this last one, you totally could do this on the number line, but look, it's 1 plus positive 3. You want to change them both. So it's just 1/2, and then you go to the right 3 whole units. So 1/2 plus 3 is 3 1/2. Again, you could do it more than one way, but we want to come up with the way that's most efficient. Okay, exercise 5 is actually going to be done in class. So go ahead and write independent practice at the top. And don't stress, because if you look at these, they're basic word problems, adding, subtracting. And then if you look on page 52, that's the only page for the lesson 7 independent practice. So it's not like you have a ton of other independent practice. So page 51 will be part of your independent practice for lesson 7. So yes, that is part of it. So when I say in the next class, lesson 7 independent practice, this is part of it. Okay, if that was a little too much for you, it went a little too fast, you can rewind, watch it again. You can come in for help and you can say, this is the part that didn't make sense. I guess I don't remember how to change them to improper fractions or get common denominators, things like that. So I've already talked to you in class about how this was one of the more challenging units, as will be 8 and 9. Okay, all right. I will see you in class. Goodbye.